You know those problems that are so messy, so tangled up with everything else that every time you try to solve one part, you accidentally create a new problem somewhere else? Well, they have a name: wicked problems. And today we're tackling one of the biggest ones out there, the future of agriculture, especially on the African continent.
Now, before we jump in, just a quick note that the ideas in this explainer are based on a lecture given by Bruno Girard from the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences at Mohammed VI Polytechnic University.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll nail down what a wicked problem actually is. Then, we'll see why farming is a perfect example. We'll zoom in on the challenges in Africa, check out the new tools we need, walk through a really powerful case study, and then talk about the path forward.
Okay, so let's get right to it. What in the world makes a problem wicked?
A wicked problem isn't just a really hard problem. It's a whole different animal. Think about huge issues like climate change or poverty. There's no single easy fix. There's no clear "we solved it" moment. They force us to think in a totally different way, to embrace the messiness and work together.
So here's what makes them so tricky. First, people often can't even agree on what the actual problem is. Everything is connected. A fix over here can set off a chain reaction and cause a disaster over there. You're not looking for a right or wrong answer, but the best possible trade-off in a super complex web.
So, keeping all that in mind, let's talk about why agriculture might just be the ultimate wicked problem. It is so much more than just planting seeds and waiting for them to grow.
I mean, just look at this list. Agriculture isn't one field of study, it's like a dozen rolled into one. To really get it, you have to understand soil science, sure, but also economics, sociology, data science, public policy, the list goes on and on. It's where nature, people, and money all collide.
And this brings us to a really critical point. It's so tempting to think some new technology, a miracle seed or a smart tractor, is going to save the day. But technology, on its own, is often worthless. It has to actually fit into the real-world social and economic systems where people live and work.
So, the only way to make progress is for the experts to zoom out. The soil scientist has to understand the market forces a farmer deals with. The economist needs to understand the environmental constraints. You have to see the whole board, not just your one little piece.
Okay, let's take this big framework and apply it now, focusing on the massive and unique challenges facing agriculture across the African continent.
First, you just have to look at the numbers. The population is expected to grow by another billion people by 2050. That is a billion more people to feed, all from a system that's already under immense pressure.
And at the same time, productivity is a huge challenge. This chart is really telling. Look at the difference in fertilizer use. On average, African farms use about 20 kilograms per hectare. European farms, 200. That's a 10 times difference. And it's not a simple fix. It's tied up in costs, infrastructure, and risk.
Now you might have heard the myth that Africa could just solve this by turning its vast, uncultivated lands into farms, but the reality is much, much more complicated. That available land is often vital rainforest, critical pasture land, or incredibly fragile ecosystems. Plowing it under would be a global disaster.
This all points to one clear conclusion. The answer isn't about finding more land. It's about sustainably getting more from the land that's already being farmed. It's about intensification and diversification, not just expansion.
So if the old, simple solutions are off the table, what do we do? Well, it means we need a whole new toolbox, one that's actually built to handle this level of complexity.
And this new toolbox is pretty incredible. It brings together everything from old-school fieldwork and farm trials to cutting-edge satellite imagery and AI. It blends computational models that can predict the future with participatory methods that, actually involve farmers in designing the solutions.
One really powerful tool is called farm typology. You can basically think of it as market segmentation for farms. It recognizes that there's no such thing as an average farmer. You classify farms into groups based on what they have, what they do, and what they want. A solution for one type might be totally wrong for another.
But here's the most important part. It's not just about having a bunch of cool tools. The real skill, the true art, is knowing how to combine them, to weave the data from satellites and surveys and soil samples together into a single story that helps you see the whole system at once.
Okay, let's get out of the abstract and look at a real-world example from India. It's a perfect story of how a wicked problem plays out and how a systemic solution can fix it.
So follow this chain reaction. It started with a really good intention, a policy to save groundwater by making farmers plant rice later. But this created a new problem. It squeezed the time farmers had to plant their next crop, wheat. So to clear their fields quickly, they started burning the leftover rice stalks. The result? A massive, choking cloud of air pollution over cities like Delhi every single year. A water solution created an air pollution nightmare.
The solution wasn't just to ban burning. It was a clever piece of tech called the Happy Seeder. This machine lets farmers plant wheat seeds directly through the leftover rice residue. No need to burn anything. It solves the farmer's time problem, it solves the city's air pollution problem, and it even makes the soil healthier. That's a systemic win-win-win.
So, what does this all mean for the future? What's the way forward? Well, it really comes down to a fundamental shift in mindset.
One of the biggest roadblocks is how we structure our efforts. Wicked problems don't care about our 3 to 5 year project funding cycles. We have to move away from funding isolated short-term projects and start investing in coherent, long-term programs that have the time and space to actually adapt and learn.
And this leaves us with one last big question to think about. When you're facing a problem that's so interconnected with no clear start or finish, where do you even begin? The answer, it seems, isn't about finding the perfect first step, but about fundamentally changing how we see the problem in the first place.